Niagara Falls. A breathtaking spectacle of nature, massive, roaring, mesmerizing. It draws millions every year, offering awe-inspiring views and unforgettable memories. But underneath all that beauty, there's a much darker side. A history soaked in thrill-seeking tragedy and fatal miscalculations. Throughout history, a handful of brave, or perhaps reckless souls have challenged the mighty force of the falls, believing they could beat nature at its own game. Some walked away as legends. Others weren't so lucky. So today we're diving deep into 6 of the most tragic deaths ever recorded at Niagara Falls. These aren't just stories of failure. They're reminders of how fragile life is when standing toe-to-toe with nature's raw power. Viewer discretion is advised. 1. Charles Stevens, the first fatal barrel ride. The year was 1920, and Charles Stevens, a 58-year-old barber from Bristol, England, stood at the edge of Niagara River, ready to defy death. He wasn't a seasoned stuntman or an engineer, just an ordinary man with an extraordinary urge to do something legendary. At the time, Niagara Falls had become a hotspot for daredevils. The stunt? Going over the falls in a barrel. That's right, a barrel. But Charles wasn't reckless, at least not in his own mind. He crafted a specially designed oak barrel reinforced with steel hoops. And inside, he placed a 100-pound anvil. The idea was to keep the barrel upright during the drop, much like how ballast stabilizes a ship. Picture the scene, the thunder of the falls, the mist swirling in the air, the crowd watching from the banks. Charles climbs into the barrel, heart racing, hope in his eyes. His assistants seal it shut and give it a push. The barrel bobs and spins as it's pulled by the river's ferocious currents. It rocks wildly, like it's fighting against the very river that's dragging it forward. Then, silence, as it vanishes over the edge of the 167-foot drop. People wait. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours. Finally, something surfaces, but it's not what anyone hoped for. Pieces of the barrel float in the water, and among them a horrifying sight, a human arm still strapped to what's left of the harness inside. The anvil, which was supposed to stabilize the barrel, had sealed Charles's fate. It made the impact far too severe. The barrel shattered against the rocks below, killing Charles instantly. He became the first person to die attempting to conquer Niagara Falls in a barrel. A daring dream, shattered by unforgiving reality. 2. George Stathakis, a visionary lost in the currents. 10 years later, in 1930, another man stood at the riverbank. George Stathakis, a 46-year-old Greek immigrant from Buffalo, New York, had a fascination not just with stunts, but with the deeper mysteries of life. George believed he had a message to share with the world, a message about spirituality and the afterlife. And he thought that surviving a barrel plunge over Niagara Falls would give him the fame needed to get that message out. His barrel wasn't ordinary. This thing was massive, over 10 feet long, made of oak, reinforced with steel, and weighing nearly 2,000 pounds. Inside, he had oxygen tanks and supplies. And he wasn't going alone. George brought along his beloved pet turtle, Sonny Boy, who was reportedly over 150 years old. As the barrel began its journey, George must have felt both confidence and calm. His preparations were meticulous. The barrel floated toward the falls, bobbing slightly in the current before tipping over the edge and disappearing into the mist. But unlike Charles's attempt, George's barrel survived the drop, only to be trapped behind the falls in a powerful and unreachable current. Rescue teams tried everything they could, but the location was impossible to access. For over 20 hours, George was stuck, his oxygen slowly depleting. By the time rescuers finally retrieved the barrel, it was too late. George had suffocated inside. He didn't die from the fall. He died from being trapped in the very thing designed to save him. There was one small glimmer of hope in the tragedy. Sonny Boy, the turtle, survived. 3. William Redhill Jr., a legacy cut short. By 1951, the culture of stunts at Niagara had reached a boiling point. That's when William Redhill Jr. decided to make his mark. Red Jr. wasn't chasing thrills for glory. He was fighting to save his family's name. His father, Redhill Sr., was a local legend, a rescuer, river expert, and daredevil. But Red Jr. struggled to live up to that legacy, especially as financial troubles and personal struggles mounted. Desperate, Red Jr. came up with his own stunt. But unlike the barrels used by previous daredevils, his contraption, called the Thing, was a thrown-together bundle of inner tubes, canvas straps, and fishing nets. It looked more like a raft made by a kid in a backyard than a device built to survive a 167-foot plunge. Despite warnings from friends, experts, and even his own gut, Red went through with it. The Thing floated unsteadily toward the falls, twisting and bouncing in the choppy river. Then, it tipped and vanished. Moments later, the water was littered with shredded inner tubes and canvas. The Thing had disintegrated on impact. Red's body was recovered the next day. The tragic attempt shocked the community. After his death, regulations around daredevil stunts tightened dramatically. Permits became nearly impossible to get. It marked the end of an era, and a sobering reminder that courage without caution can come at the ultimate cost. 4. Jesse Sharp, A Kayak and a Dream. Fast forward to June 5, 1990. Jesse Sharp, a 28-year-old expert whitewater kayaker from Tennessee, had already conquered some of North America's most dangerous rapids. But he wanted something more. He wanted his name in the history books. His plan? Navigate over Niagara Falls in a kayak. No helmet, no life jacket, no protective gear. Why? He believed it would obstruct his vision or trap him in the rapids. Confidence in his skills blinded him to the real dangers of Niagara. He even made dinner reservations in Lewiston, New York, believing he'd paddle there after his stunt. As witnesses watched from the banks, Jesse's sleek fiberglass kayak sped toward the falls. Just before going over, he raised his paddle triumphantly in the air, his final salute. Then, silence. Rescue teams scoured the waters. Hours passed. The kayak was found, dented, downstream. Jesse never surfaced. To this day, his body has never been recovered. A kayaker's final ride, lost to the churning abyss. Jesse's preparations had been deliberate, at least in his eyes. He studied water flow patterns near the brink of the falls, timed the river's speed, and believed the kayak's narrow body could cut cleanly through the turbulence below. Some of his friends later said he spoke often about wanting to be the first and make history. He believed that conquering Niagara in a kayak would open doors to documentaries, interviews, maybe even a sponsorship deal. But those close to him also admitted he carried a quiet intensity, the kind that doesn't always allow room for doubt. He left behind a note with a friend outlining what to do with his story, how to share it if he didn't make it. His confidence was undeniable, but it may have also been his greatest blind spot. He underestimated the chaos at the base of the falls, where water churns unpredictably and visibility drops to zero. Even the best swimmers wouldn't stand a chance if ejected. For Jesse, the dream of making history collided with a force that has no respect for human ambition. 5. Robert Overacker, The Jet Ski Leap for a Cause. On October 1st, 1995, Robert Overacker took a different approach. This 39-year-old stuntman from California wasn't looking for fame, money, or even thrills. He wanted to raise awareness for homelessness. His plan? Ride a jet ski off the Horseshoe Falls and deploy a parachute mid-air. Wearing a wetsuit and helmet, he roared across the river. As he reached the edge, he launched himself off the jet ski and pulled his chute. But it didn't open. Whether it was a malfunction or an oversight in testing, no one knows. What's certain is this: Robert plunged 167 feet into the churning water without any protection. Survival was impossible. His body was recovered the next day. His death wasn't about recklessness. It was a tragic example of how even the noblest intentions can't compete with forces of nature when the right precautions aren't in place. 6. Kirk Jones, the man who tempted fate twice. In October 2003, Kirk Jones did something almost unthinkable. He jumped over Niagara Falls on purpose, with no protective gear. Some believed it was a suicide attempt. Others saw it as a stunt gone right. Either way, Kirk miraculously survived. He became the first person to survive a fall over the Horseshoe Falls without any device or suit. For a time, he became a media sensation. Interviews, news coverage, he was everywhere. But his fame came with consequences. Fined and banned from Canada for life, he drifted away from the spotlight. But Niagara wasn't done with Kirk. In 2017, he returned, this time with an inflatable Zorb ball and a companion, his pet boa constrictor Misty. This time, he wanted more than just survival. He wanted a career. The plan was to film the stunt, sell the footage, and rebrand himself as an entertainer. He had even set up a website and social media accounts ahead of time, hoping to gain traction. There was talk of turning the footage into a documentary. Some reports suggest Kirk had practiced rolling in the Zorb on land to prepare for the turbulence. He believed the ball would bounce, not break, and the boa would be safe inside. There were even handwritten notes found later outlining the stunt step by step, including safety measures he never had the chance to use. Friends later said he seemed calm and oddly optimistic in the days leading up to it. The idea of surviving the falls a second time wasn't just about ego, it was about rewriting his story. But Niagara Falls doesn't offer second chances easily. The current that once carried him to an impossible miracle now became the very force that erased him. The idea was simple in theory. Get inside the ball, float to the edge, go over the falls, and land safely with the cushioning of the ball. In practice, disaster. Witnesses reported the ball spinning violently before it reached the brink. When it was retrieved later, it was empty. 2 months later, Kirk's body was found 12 miles downstream. Misty was never found. No one knows if he jumped out of the ball or was thrown from it. But what's clear is this: the miracle that saved him once didn't come again. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life tales of courage, tragedy, and unforgettable moments. Got thoughts on which story hit hardest? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it.